Today, we're going to show you how to build a chassis jig from scratch using a few measuring tapes and some angle finders. All this and more today on TruckU. A good start.
Yeah, it's coming along.
Hey, welcome to TruckU. I'm Matt Steele.
Hi, I'm Bruno Massel.
Now, Bruno and I had this crazy idea. We wanted to build something versatile. We don't want it to be able to do just one thing. You know, this King of the Hammers event is all the rage. Everybody's talking about it because it combines a lot of different elements, you know. And we're not going to go out there and run that event. I mean, we might, but we want to be able to do all those different things, from racing to crawling over stuff to jumping. You know, if it rolls over on its side, we want to just roll it back under the tires and send it going. That's the idea that we're trying to do.
Yeah, we want like a man's hybrid, not one that's going to be a grocery getter, but one out on the trail, something that you can have a lot of fun with and be comfortable in and go fast.
Now, this was our donor truck right here, and Bruno affectionately calls it the time donor, right? Is that what you named it?
Absolutely, man.
You know, we donated a lot of time to this thing. What we're trying to do is salvage all the parts off of this that we can reuse. Some of the stuff we can sell, some of it we're going to scrap. We don't know what all it's going to be yet, but we know we have a little bit of stuff from the front that we can keep.
Yeah, the axle shafts are one thing, and so are the brake assemblies. Now,
right.
The transfer or the gear up front was broken, so that was no good. And we had some issues with some other stuff, but we come to the back, we've got a lot of good parts here now. Namely, for one, the transfer case and transmission. Those are both good, usable parts. Now, don't get me wrong, we might not use it, but they have value to it. You know, the whole idea is with our projects, we don't have a lot of money to work with. We've got more time than money, so if we can save a few $100 here or make a few $100 here, there, and there, it adds up quick, and now we have money to put into our new vehicle.
The chassis is another prime example of that, because this will be good for somebody. You can make a nice little rig out of this. It's going to be obsolete for what we want to do, but we can get some money for this. We can scrap that. You know, the shocks are reusable too as well. We may not use them, but we may, so it's nice. We'll just kind of put them off to the side. The rear end is good to go. We know that baby is rock solid, so that's cool. And, you know, who knows with the other stuff. We'll have some scrap. That's all right. That's the whole idea.
Now, the new rig we're going to build from the ground up, and first, before we can build a chassis for it, we need to actually build a chassis jig to build the chassis on, so you can see how in-depth this build's going to get.
And before we do that, we need to finish ripping all this stuff off. So this is where it all begins as far as our new jig goes that we're going to put together. Now, rule number one when you're building a jig like this, if you're going to go about that, is make sure that your surface or your floor is good and level and good and smooth. Now, interestingly enough, when they built this building, they had the dudes out here with the white coats and the lasers and all that, and we were kind of laughing at them, but they did a great job on the floor. This thing is perfectly smooth.
Yeah, the whole idea is you got to have a good starting point to begin with. Now, what we're using here is some it was a 24-foot stick. Originally, we cut it into 12-piece sections, and the reason why is because we're never going to build a car that's going to be 24 feet in overall length. 12 feet will give us plenty of room to do basically what we want to do in a couple different applications, so we'll be good there. The other thing is we've got, these are 2x4s that are 3/16 thick, so it'll be strong enough to hold up to what we're trying to do. Now, the idea is to make sure that you really spend a lot of time getting your jig square and getting it level. Now, if you've got a floor you're working on that's got some angle to it, it's not a big deal. All you need to do is shim it or put some legs on it with some adjusters. But once you start building up from it, it needs to be square and level. Otherwise, your whole car is going to be screwed up to begin with. So you got to have a good starting point. Like this right here would be nothing but trouble.
So now we're ready to start piecing this together and get ourselves a nice big rectangular jig. So we've got our two 12-foot pieces laid out right here. So what we're going to do is come down 12 inches from the end of each one of these pieces. So we'll have 4 lines that we're going to have to make, and we can scribe that in there right. All right. So we'll get a nice line. Like I said, we'll do that all the way around on all four. Then we'll come back to this piece back here that's laying back, and we're going to cut two 44-inch pieces. So when it's all laid out and these things are all separated, we'll put the 44-inch piece in here like this. Now, with the 2 inches on each end, that'll be 48 inches wide. So this jig, again, will be 12 feet long, 48 inches wide, which will be a good size for this particular project that we're doing. And it's a nice size, too. We can hang on to it because it's probably a good size to build pretty much anything. I don't think we're going to need a jig bigger than that anytime soon. Now, that being said, I think I'm going to have Bruno do some cutting. But we need to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have some tips for welding this all together.
Hey, welcome back to TruckU. As you can see, we got our chassis jig all laid out on the floor how this is going to go. Now, Matt went ahead and marked where everything's going to be at. I cut our uprights. Now the whole trick comes down to being very patient and going ahead and double and triple checking yourself, because we got to make sure this thing is square and it's level. This is going to be our point of reference through our entire build. So if this is off, the car's going to be really off going down the road. Yeah, remember the old saying, measure twice and cut once? We're going to level check about 30 times, weld once, measure 30 more times, weld again. That's what we'll keep doing. So I've got a couple shims as well if we need them, which I don't think we're going to. You know, if you're doing this on a ground surface like this and you've got a little pit or whatever and you need to shim it up, you can do that with just some scrap metal that you have laying around. But again, this floor seems really level and flat, so I've been checking that. I've checked just about everything on here, B. So, I mean, that looks good right there. It's almost freaky how flat this floor is.
It really is.
I wouldn't believe I just didn't see it with my own eyes. So we know it's level, and what we've done to try and get this thing square is you take a square like this, put it in the corners, and make sure that it makes contact all the way around. Now, in an ideal world, you would have a square that's as long as you would have our jig for, which would be 10 more feet sticking down, but that's not realistic. So what we do is go ahead to each corner and put the square in and get it close. Then we're going to make a measurement in diagonals from corner to corner on both sides, and you want to get those numbers to be the same to make sure that this is square to each other. There's a couple different ways you can do it. Just make sure you do it the same corner to corner. This way you have a point of reference that's going to be the same. All right, so now what we want to do is go ahead and tack weld this thing. I've got our magnet in place, and this is going to try and hold our angle while we tack it. Now, we're going to tack it on both sides and measure again, because putting a heat through and welding is going to make our square, well, shift a little bit. So we want to make sure that as we go along, we don't lose our square as we go. So I'll lay down a tack here on either side, and we should be good.
Go for it, Tack Master.
Tack Master. Smoked you. Woohoo!
He's so competitive that honestly sometimes he's hard to be around. But here, the next step in the evolution of this is determining what the wheelbase is going to be. And there's a couple of different schools of thought as far as that go. Are you out of breath?
I'm good, buddy.
Take a break.
That was a long way for me to run. I haven't gone that far in a long time.
Now, the previous truck had a wheelbase in between 95 and 96 inches, which when he was in tight corners or just going up something and had to make a quick, really tight corner like that, it worked great. But if he went out and was looking for some top speed or climbing something real steep, that was the big disadvantage. So, you know, I don't know which way we're going to go here. What are you thinking?
See, I'm thinking like I accelerated across this chassis jig. We need something that's going to be long and lean. You know what I mean? They can cat like reflexes out there. So if we go like 170 inches, I think it'll be nice and stable at about 220. This way we can really get some mile per hour going. Perhaps a tad much. Why don't we split the difference and do something like, I don't know, 102? That sounds fair. Okay, 102 it is. Now here's the situation that we've got. On our jig down here, these long outside ones are 144 inches long. And we want a 102-inch wheelbase. So the difference is 42 inches, and we want to split that up. So we'll take 21 inches off of each end, and that's where we're going to put this cross member there that Bruno cut up. So this is going to represent our axles going across the vehicle. So now we've got our wheelbase determined. What we're going to do is actually use this as a starting point to build up from it. Now when you get chassis kits out, you can buy them store-bought. They're pretty much universal. Problem is, it isn't specifically built for your applications. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. The way we're going to do it is try and keep our package up front as compact as possible. This way we're going to build around our front axle. So what we're going to do is this will be considered our ground height, the top of this beam right here. So we're going to measure up to compensate for the tire for our axles. Tire's 37 inches tall. Cut that in half is going to be 18 and a half. Good. I always check with the man over here. And this is going to be our center point. So we're going to take an upright, we'll weld it onto here. Actually, we're going to go with one 37 inches tall. we'll cut it in half with a 3-inch circle or hole saw, and that'll give us our center point for our axle to go right across on.
Now here's what we're doing. We're actually going to build this vehicle in its compressed ride height. So we're not going to build it hanging with all the parts, you know, at full extension, like the suspension's fully extended like that. It's going to be all compressed. That way our bars will be where they need to be, and then when it does extend, we're not going to have any of them slamming into each other, because if you built it the other way, you could have some issues when it all gets compressed, like when you're landing or something.
So it'll be all
like
like coiled back like a cobra, ready to strike.
Exactly, dude. I told you, he's very competitive. All right, we need to get these cut up, and when we come back, we'll start getting these axles in place.
Hey, welcome back to TruckU. So our chassis jig is done. It's on the ground. It's now time to start building up from it. And first thing we need to do is go ahead and build the upright to support our front axle. Everything else is going to be built around it. Now, we're using a 37-inch tall tire, and that's why we've got this upright at 37 inches. Now, the half of that is going to be 18.5 inches, so that's the center point where our axle will go through. Now, we're using a 3-inch hole saw because the axle housing is 3 inches, so it'll fit right into it. Now, the first thing you want to do as you approach a drill press is never use gloves. That's a safety tip because it'll pull you in if you get caught, and it can get really dangerous. You always want to use some glasses to protect yourself, keep anything out of your eyes, and a good friend for you is going to be using some cutting fluid, some oil. It'll keep the tool cool and keep the metal parts from loading up on it, so it'll keep cutting. Now, when you're doing something like this where it's heavy steel, you want to slow down the machine itself, and you can do that by adjusting the pulleys inside here. We got it at just about its slowest setting, so the idea is to let the tool do the cutting for you. Now, one last thing to keep in mind is we've got a 2-inch tube is what we're using, and if we didn't use these little wood shims here, you'd actually hit the vise first and you'd break the tool. So the little wood shims on the side will protect the tool and allow us to cut all the way through. I think that about has it covered. We've got it lubricated. It's now just time to fire it up and start doing some drilling. Nice and slow is the key here.
So we've got our axle supports in place right here, and we'll just tack them into place. And actually, we mentioned earlier that we're not reusing that front axle housing, so this little piece of galvanized pipe is going to do a little stand-in piece right there. That's just for visual. Now we can see where when we get our new front housing, that's where it's going to be. Now we're just tacking everything into place from this point out on this jig and getting it in there good and strong. That way it'll support everything, but we're not going to fully weld everything all up because we might want to build something else, build another vehicle on this jig down the road. Our buddy might come in and say, hey man, I love that little rig that you built. I want one just like it, but I only want a 99-inch wheelbase on it. Well, that way we can snap these little welds off, move it back a couple inches and build something else. That way it's much more versatile and we can use this jig for years to come. But we've got another thing that we've got to do back here on the center line. Bruno, you got that.
Yeah, man, and this way if we want to go to the 170 inches like I was telling you about, we can still, still work with it.
We'll build a jig extension.
So the backs here, we're going to do the same thing. And, you know, while we're back here, one thing we need to do is go ahead and put a center line as a reference point for the back of our vehicle, for our vehicle as a whole. Now, we've already welded this and put it evenly on our jig. Now it's a matter of finding the center point of this. It being 60 inches, we're going to be at 30 here, so.
Your math is really good today.
I know, I'm pretty good, aren't I? Hold on, let me
Describe the heck out of that thing.
get a little mark here. So this is going to be our reference point right here for the middle of the vehicle. Now, keep in mind that we're not building a street rod here. Everything doesn't need to be asymmetrical on either side where it's balanced off perfectly. You know, this is a purpose-built vehicle, so we might have to compensate, bend a tube in here on one side more than the other side to compensate for where fire bottles, or we've got the travel suspension, that sort of thing. But it's a quick reference to give us an idea where we sit inside the vehicle, left or right or dead through the center. So one little thing you can do while you're back here.
All right, dude, good call. I'll get these up for you.
All right, hit it, Tack Master.
Today in the lab, our assignment is Black Magic Tire Wet. It outshines all other tire sprays. As you can see, we've actually done up some of these other tires with some other available products on the market, and we did this tire with the Black Magic. And take a look at it. It looks fantastic. This is exactly what you want the tire to look like if you're going to use a product like this. Now, if you've used these types of products before, you know one of the big problems is the fact that a couple days later, especially if you've had some light rain, it doesn't even look like you put anything on, and it defeats the purpose of even putting the product on the tire. But those days are over with the Black Magic Magic tire wet. Now, let's take a look at the Black Magic tire with some simulated real-world conditions. All right, so here comes a little bit of rain. Raining down on the tires, and actually the rain's coming down a little bit harder now. You're still driving, and you take a look at that. The water just beads off on the side and it rolls right off, and the tire stays looking fantastic, and that's exactly what you want, and that goes to prove right there why the Black Magic tire wet stays on and it's gonna outshine all the other tire sprays. You know what? The assignment with the Black Magic tire wet is done.
Keyless remote is a great modern convenience that you can add to your truck or any 12-volt system. There's no fumbling for the right key. It's a simple press of the button to unlock both doors. You can also unlock all 4 doors simply by turning the regular door key. It also works inside the vehicle just by locking or unlocking the driver's side door. This is a great convenience feature and easy add-on for your truck. Universal 2 or 4-door applications are available. All of the wiring is included and all the necessary wiring diagrams, so it's easy to install without any switches. This tip is brought to you by LMC Truck. With over 30,000 truck parts in stock, you can get the right part at the right price right now.
Welcome back to TruckU. Not so long ago, our buddy brought us a donor vehicle in, and we had a bunch of pieces and parts on that we wanted to salvage. We took all that we could. Some of those parts were a little bit rusty, and one of the things that made life a lot easier for us was right here. It's from Metal Rescue. It's a rust remover bath. If you've got an old rusty part, you immerse it right in there, soak it, let it do the work, and when you pull it out, it's nice and clean, and that part's ready to use again.
Yeah, there's no agitation, no scrubbing. The best part about it, it's completely safe. There's no acids involved. You can dip your hand in it. It's not going to hurt your skin. It's not going to hurt the metal itself, because all it's doing is pulling the rust off of the part. Really easy to do because there's no work involved. It doesn't get better than that.
No, this is great, and actually this is one of the advantages we have as guys when we're working with tools too. You know, you can say, hey honey, look at these parts. I've got to get these cleaned up. You roll out to the garage. This could take me hours, babe. You know, she doesn't know any better, right? You're out there throwing on the TV because all you did was throw this in the tub and let it do the work. I mean, you see some befores and afters right here. It really doesn't get any easier. And you know what the best part is? When you are done, you can just dump it down the drain or throw it out in the grass because it's environmentally friendly, and you're not going to destroy anything when you get rid of it. So your pieces are clean and you're not harming the earth. It's the Metal Rescue Rust Remover Bath from Armor. This is the DZ NXC running boards for today's crossover vehicles, like the Ford Edge. You know, if you look around, you're seeing a lot more of them out on the road, and these manufacturers are figuring out, hey, it's time to make some accessories for these, and this is a really nice one here.
Yeah, it's a smart little product because it's going to give you that accessorized look to your vehicle and customize a little bit, and you know what, it's really practical too because it's going to give you a safe, non-slip surface so you'll have full access to your vehicle, and it's great because it's made of lightweight, high-quality aluminum where it won't rust or corrode.
Yeah, and it's not going to chip or peel on you. This thing is going to stay there. So you're loading up the kids and the groceries, this is a nice piece. It's the DZ NXC running boards for today's crossover vehicles. The Bars Leaks head gasket fix can actually save you a lot of money in the long run, because if you have a head gasket issue, I mean, you're looking at $1,000 easy, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, the gasket's a cheap fix. The gasket itself, a cheap part, I should say. It's all the labor that goes involved. I mean, you're talking a lot of time to disassemble the whole upper half of your engine to replace that gasket. This is great because in about 15 minutes of time, if you've got a coolant leak in your head gasket, you pour this stuff in and it was sealed up. I mean, you can't ask for anything any easier than that.
Right, you pour it right in there. It works on all gas and diesel engines, and it's going to work on any cast iron or aluminum blocks and heads, so it's pretty much good to go in any application.
Yeah, and I'll work with any antifreeze too, or any coolant, so you don't have to worry about any certain mixtures of this not working with. You just pour it in and forget about it.
It's the Bars Leaks head gasket fix. If you know anything about trucks, you know the name Line-X. They are the industry leader in truck bed protection, and the name of the game with Line-X is to protect the bed of your truck from anything that you or Mother Nature can dish out.
Now, the spread bed liners are being used in all different places on your truck these days, whether it's the bumper, the undercarriage, or little step bars, whatever it is, Line-X can protect it. I mean, look what it did to this pop can. Literally made it indestructible. It can do the same thing for your truck as well, and it comes in an array of colors now, and it's guaranteed that it will not pop or flake for the entire life of your vehicle. You can't ask for more than that.
I've got this little boat with these foam pads, and they kept peeling up and this, that, the other, so we Line-X those. They've been on there for 5 or 6 years. They still look great, and my buddy actually had an old Bronco, and he Line-X the whole thing. Dark green Line-X Bronco. It looked awesome. Nothing's ever going to happen to that Bronco. It's Line-X, the industry leaders in truck bed protection.
For more information on anything you've seen on today's show, check out speedtv.com or visit our website at truckutv.com.
All right, let me check the plumb here. Plumb is good. This thing's lined up. This is really going to come in handy, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
For sure. All right, now this is really the first piece of the puzzle that we get to start laying out.
These are one of those donor parts we work so hard for, you know?
Yeah, this is one that we get to keep. So, here, you ready?
All right, hold on. Let me get this set up here, and I'll put the jack stand underneath. Watch the fingers there.
That up just a little bit.
You can roll it into it.
All right.
That's good.
Cool. Now that's good. Now let's check our height here, because this is basically the floor right here. This is the baseline for us. So we want to check that 18 and a half, 18 and 3/4, which is good because this is actually a 3 1/4 inch tube on the back. So that 1/4 inch is just fine.
So we did good.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's lined up where it needs to be.
Now, one thing we want to keep in mind is the fact that, we're going to, this housing itself, we're going to try and utilize it, but a lot of the bracketry is not going to work because things will be lined up a little differently. I can tell you straight off that we're really going to need to reinforce this whole housing. Now, it's built for going up, for rock climbing and doing stuff at slow speeds.
Right.
We're going to be going at least 150. I'm thinking 250 maybe if we're lucky. And we're going to want to reinforce this thing 6 ways to Sunday all the way across the top and the back. So if we hit something going across the desert or the dirt or wherever it is at speed, we won't crush the rear end housing.
You're going to be driving at that speed right there. Okay, so these, where the shocks came down on the back, that bracket's coming off because they're going to mount on the top of the shaft right there. This is actually going to have to come out too because the link bar shot out straight the way that it did on the old one. On the donor truck, we're going to run a dual triangulated 4-link setup right there. So these are going to have to run in at sort of an angle. Like you said, we're going to have to bracket that up. So the first piece of the puzzle is in, but there's still so much more work to do.
Yeah, if you're building, a cookie cutter car or something where it's been done 100 times over, you can go ahead and set your pinion angle right now and tack weld this thing in place by putting a little angle finder on it. But this isn't one of those deals. This is a race vehicle, really. So before we can find our pinion angle, we need to find out where the transfer case is going to be at, and that we can get the right angle for. So in the meantime, we'll probably just tack weld this on the side here so it doesn't fall out or get in the way or someone knock this thing off, just to get an idea where we're at. But like I said, there's a lot of things we've got to do before we can get to that point.
All in all, a very good day with getting all the pieces off of the donor truck and getting this jig built, because this was a relatively easy job. A little bit time consuming. You definitely want to be careful when you do it, but not overly difficult, and this is something that can come in handy for a long time to come, man.
Yep, reuse it.
Who knows how many times we're going to be able to use this thing.
I'm thinking we put that dragster on it, it'll work just right.
You really
a little overhang on either side, but you never know.
Hung up on the long jig, aren't you? We're out of time. We're going to see you next time right here on TruckU.
See you.
All right, dude.